So I think our first video, hell yeah, man. Love you, bro. No cap. Um, yeah, so our first video with our freaking favorite Jew, Benny Boy, talking about the fall of civilization and how Rome was so amazing. With this dude, Vivek Ramaswamy, he kind of comes off to me as like someone who really just doesn't give a shit at all and is just doing it for money. Like, he wrote a book just saying all the typical bullshit. He sounds like a freaking salesman. We're gonna get into it and just debunk both of these freaking dummies' stupid shit. Here we go. Desktop audio is on. I didn't fuck up at all today, man. I recorded the whole segment, you know, like, so it's going good so far. Let's try to keep it this way. Let me resize this so it is aesthetically pleasing. Wham, bam, bam. Boom. There we go.
With this, I think with this revival of the shared pursuit of excellence, the revival of civic duty, we're taking a bet. Right? The bet is this could go actually even worse, right? It's co-opted by the central government as it relates to civic duty. On the excellence side,
I mean, the whole point of the freaking civil government is civic duty, man. Why else does it exist in the first place? You know, like, I mean, and people like Ben Shapiro's and this weirdo's mind, the government is literally only just for keeping corporations rich, dude. You know, like I just don't get these people, man. How can they spout this just obvious bullshit, man? And I don't get how people follow this and agree with it, man. It's like Americans seriously need to engage in more critical thinking, man. But it's just, as long as someone sounds official, most people will just be like, yeah, okay, without looking into it any further, man. And social media has a huge problem of just like amplifying right-wing voices, man. Like, on my, I look up a lot of right-wing bullshit for this channel, but on my personal YouTube, that I use just to fuck around and watch it on, I'll watch like one video from like Fox News or Ben Shapiro, and then my entire feed just gets inundated with just right-wing, stupid reactionary bullshit, bro. But when I go and watch stuff like, Secular Talk or the Humanist Report or any of those guys, I almost never get suggested them. I have to look for them. And YouTube knows this. Facebook knows this. Facebook has been shown to literally purposefully amplify right-wing extremists because it gets them the numbers, man. It gets them the clicks and the ad revenue. And I would not be surprised in the slightest if YouTube did the same thing, man,
Keep the government out of it. But on the citizen, on the cultivation of the citizen, the civic service, the military service piece of this, the revival of the identity of one as a citizen, okay, if it's strictly confined to that, we're taking a bet that at least it's within the remit of what a great national leader can still.
But what does our government offer us for the incentive to be a good citizen, And being a good citizen does not mean working 9 to 5 so your boss can sit on his ass in his yacht and rake in all the money and extract all your hard work, man. Being a good citizen is about being there for your fellow human being, lifting them up, lifting all of humanity up so we can achieve greatness and our higher purpose. At least in my opinion, man, it's not about this stupid division of the world, man. I think about this all the time, man. It's crazy to me that common people aren't allowed to just freely roam the earth, bro. Like, that's how fucked up our systems are. That's how much control this machine, bro, this amorphous, nebulous machine of evil has over our minds and over so many people's hearts, like these people, where they think it's normal, they think sociopathic tendencies and are admirable, bro. It's ridiculous.
Pull off for the future of a nation that can live for the next 250 years as it has for the last 250 years, rather than going the way of the Eastern Roman Empire versus the Holy Roman Empire, which is the
They
direction
always
that I think we're
harken back to
otherwise
that
heading
bullshit, bro.
as a,
And it's funny because like the ancient man, what would you call it? Like the ancient Mediterraneans, like in Greece and Rome and all that shit, they were gay as hell, bro. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were like homophobic in like a weird way, where it was like you were basically a bro if you were a top, but if you were a bottom, they were like, oh, you're fucking gay, dude. What the hell? It was weird, dude. But I mean, I bring that up to say, like, they did not have the same view of morality as you do, bro. Again, this is what fascists and fascist adjacent people do. They look back on they morph history and reality to this idea of what they want it to be and try to sell you on lies, man, to get you brought into that bullshit, bro. It's insane.
The American experiment is heading. So I guess I think we're in a zone where we should still be willing to play those odds.
Oh, hell
in a
yeah,
way
I appreciate it, bro.
I think now it goes from not just designing systems, which is what we've been talking about. I think history is written by a combination of...
Let me start that over. I gotta find a way to not hear the follow shit, because I'll see it and I'll shout you out, but it always trips me up, bro. I got I feel like I'm slightly brain damaged, man. I cannot concentrate when there's shit popping off around me. Let me rewind a little bit. But hell yeah, thanks, man. Got to big up the new folks in the Twitch. Oh, hell yeah, bro. You know how it is, bro. Leftists taking over the world, baby. Let's do it. Dude, haven't seen you here before. Oh, yeah, dude. I just started 10 days ago, man. But 3 days ago, I really kicked it into high gear, started streaming every day, taking this shit seriously, bro. And it's popping off pretty good, especially on YouTube. You're my 9th follower on here, but yesterday on YouTube, bro, I got 10 subscribers, Bet I just hosted you. You're the man, bro. Big ups, big ups. That's how we do it, man. All right, let's get into it.
To play those odds in a way that, I think now it goes from not just designing systems, which is what we've been talking about. I think history is written by a combination of systems and the first personal human beings who then shape that history.
There you go with the classic idea of the strong man who leads history forward, the kind of Nietzschean ideology. I don't necessarily dislike Nietzsche, but a lot of fascists love his ass, man. And the whole reason civilization exists as it does now is because of human cooperation, the famous quote, Rome was not built in a day, and it was not built by the fucking aristocracy and the people in charge. It was built by the faceless common man who you don't hear about, man. That is what civilization and human progress is. There are people in the world who are exceptional and jettison us into new ways of thinking and human progress, but they had to get there with the help on the backs of every single person who came before them, When you take time to add your social links, throw your YouTube and Twitter up there, like I have in my layout. Okay, I got you, bro. I'm new to Twitch. I don't watch Twitch streams, you know what I mean? I'm usually over on YouTube and stuff, but yeah. It's on the screen, but a link would be nice. Okay, I got you guys. Today, after the stream, I'm going to go ahead and get the shit set up real nice, bro. I'm the type of person who, I have an idea, and I'm just okay, let's do it. I go as fast as freaking possible, and sometimes I forget to do shit, but hey, you guys are my boys looking out. I appreciate it, man. Get back into it.
At least have a vision for that system. In this fear of American capitalism and the fear of American democracy, here's the affirmative values that we can revive as a shared, cohering national identity based on excellence, based on civic revival of civic duty, and then bet on the possibility that when America went through its last identity crisis in the late 70s, a leader rose to tie up the pieces that we might...
There was a point I wanted to make there.
Then bet on the possibility that when America went through its last identity crisis in the late 70s, a leader rose to tie up the pieces that we...
So I think we have been in a slow motion reckoning with capitalism and specifically American capitalism and imperialism. I think in the 60s, more so in like the mid 60s to the late 1970s, especially after the Vietnam War, those ideas of man, what is it called? Damn. Of modernism. Those ideas of modernism were starting to die out, and we were we were being introduced to postmodernism and capitalist realism, you know, like but I think after 9/11 it kind of shut down the conversation, you know what I mean? And so we've been kind of stuck in history, I feel like that's why things feel so repeated and like we're sludging along in this kind of death march, because we never got to have the full battle here in the United States between these ideas of communism versus capitalism, or socialism versus capitalism. And since the US is a global hegemonic power, it affects the entire world, where we're just creeping to our death, and while the solution is in plain sight in my eyes. What do you think about that trans teacher who broke down and cried because her students misgendered them? Well, I mean, it's unfortunate, man. Nobody wants to feel that way, have their identity, you know, called into question and mocked. I didn't see that, you know, an elementary school teacher. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say kids are kids, you know, kids are fucking assholes. And sometimes they don't realize like the shit that they do, you know. If you're going to be someone who goes up in front of people and does this shit, you kind of think they thought the second grade. Yeah, right. I think you have to have thicker skin, you know. You have to be able to take that criticism, and instead of caving to that pressure, maybe try and educate these people. But I mean, that's harder and harder every day. We went into an article, I think before you were on, how they're just clamping down on trans rights and all that bullshit, bro. So it gets harder. And I'm sure she's aware of this and all this stuff happening in school, and it's extra stress. So no hate on her. Yeah, but at some point you're being too sensitive. No, I definitely agree. I 100% believe in compassion and recognizing the dignity and humanity of others, but you also have to realize that the world is a tough place. People aren't going to agree with you, and shit like that. I mean, like I said, you do you, man. Whatever her struggle is, she's going to have to deal with it. But in my opinion, you've got to build yourself up. You got to be more sure of yourself in the world, and you've got to say, fuck it, man. I'm going to be who I'm going to be. And if you don't like that, that's too bad. And again, they're kids, man. They're going to say mean shit, and they're probably hearing this dumb bullshit from their parents who, you know, are bigoted as fuck, you know? But I digress. Let's get back into this shit. Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly.
Might put ourselves in the position for the same thing to happen sometime in the next half decade. Because if it ain't happening in the next half decade, I think the cake is mostly baked. And
yeah, I don't see why that's a story. Would you tell a teacher to toughen up if they cried for any other reason? I mean, me personally, I wouldn't tell anybody to toughen up. I may seem like I'm a big tough guy. I'm just kidding, but I cry literally all the time, dude. I'm emotional as fuck. I'll be crying at movies. I'll be crying at shit on YouTube, bro. I'm a little bitch, but kids are bad, but adults can be worse. Well, I mean, kids don't know any better for the most part. Adults doing shit like this are just assholes, or they have shit within themselves that they haven't figured out, and they project that on others, man. I love saying projection, but projection is the name of the game in this world, bro. I project all the time, you know? I'm not above it. I just think LGBTQ became too much. Well, I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, bro. I think there's like a small, very small section of like their community who goes overboard, but like not overboard in terms of like human rights, give all the rights to everybody, you know what I mean? But they present themselves in a way that feeds into the hysteria, you know what I mean? And it puts people off. And unfortunately in this world, I don't even be trying to talk about the community. I have LGBT, but I hate the group overall. I mean, I don't hate the group. I think that damn, what was I just saying? Yeah, I think they want too much. They want too much freedom at this point. And a lot of their major problems are absurd. I don't know, bro. Like some of the shit does get stupid. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like one thing that I don't have a problem with, but I just kind of disagree on a philosophical standpoint is the concept of creating new genders. So we live in a gendered society where genders exist, and because we live in that, you said they want to, right? Oh, my bad, dude. I'm a little bit autistic. I'm not even joking. I think I'm a little bit autistic. Sometimes I don't get sarcasm, but um, I think that. Damn, what was I just saying? It's all good, man. I'm going in circles, man. I'm pro LGBT. Give them all the rights. The minority, the shrieking minority, is a minority, but sometimes they speak the loudest and just end up hurting their cause instead of helping it. You know what I mean?
And the best we're going to do as local institutions there on going forward. The only problem with that, Ben, is that 20 years later, that means that China.
Oh, yeah. So he was just talking about 50 years in the future, bro. 50 years, if we do the shit that these guys want to do, it's literally going to be a fucking McWasteland, bro. Like, in 30 years or less, we're going to have resource wars over water, bro. Capitalism is not going to solve that, bro. For me, in my opinion, it's socialism or the apocalypse, man. Capitalism has run its course. We need to start thinking outside of the box in ways to combat this. Because if we don't, it's going to get ugly and it's going to get fascist real quick. I just say let people do whatever they want. If you have a gender you like, why do you care? Agreed. No, oh yeah, I didn't get to finish that point. My point with gender is that, I mean, I could see like maybe 1,000 years from now, gender not even being a concept because it is made up. It's a social construct, you know? And like I said, in our own historical context right now, go ahead and fucking go ahead and do what you want and have those genders and all of that. And it can be useful for, you know, social classification and identification. But I think as society progresses, gender is just going to be a thing of the past. You know what I mean? That's my take on it. Like, I'm not, you know, anti non-binary, any of that. You do you, man. Yeah, I agree. Gender is stupid. Outside of pronouns, it's irrelevant. Yeah, exactly, man. Like I said, there are people who just take it too far, and I don't like to use right wing talking points, but something that is true, and it's a minority, you know what I mean. But it's something that gets on my nerves. Is some people, especially younger people, like teenagers, they kind of try to just use it for social points, you know, and that's just a small minority, but it does get to me. It's like, come on, man. Like you can try some other ways to be cool instead of like wearing pronouns like it's a freaking trend, you know? He said I'm an advocate for capitalism. Hey, you do you, man. That's all I have to say, man. There's too much shit going on for me to be in favor of that, bro. Too much suffering. Why is gender so complex now? This world is getting crazy, man. I mean, I think we're like on the precipice of the next human revolution. Like, just like the Industrial Revolution kind of jettisoned into the age of modernism. Now we're at the stage of postmodernism, which I think is the death bell for this era. And the next era can be an age of calamity and destruction and devastation, or it can be an era of just untold prosperity and human achievement, man. We're on the precipice of some major breakthroughs, like with fusion technology. It don't get me wrong, it's decades down the line, but they're making breakthroughs, and with fusion technology could solve the energy crisis across the globe, almost unlimited energy permanently. Do you know how much that would change the fabric of society, man? So we're right at that edge, but we need to take back the levers of control so we can use those things for human interests instead of corporate profit. People have worn cultures and identities falsely forever. I don't see why this one is more annoying than Eminem. No, I agree, man. That's more of my just personal opinion, man. You know what I mean? And especially, like I said, it's mostly teenagers who do that shit. They'll get over it. They'll find out who they are. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, another another downside of like the attention economy is that you have people who are just getting into that sociopathic behavior where they basically turn themselves into clowns for clout. You know what I mean? I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that those genders are like clownish or like whatever, but I'm just saying like they try to do anything to stand out from the crowd to get those sweet clicks and likes and attention, you know, like that's just how it is. LOL, we gotta all go live and capitalize off Jeff Bezos. Hell yeah, man. Give me that money, bro. He doesn't need all that bullshit. $1 million and I would be set for life, bro. Come on. All right.
The national identity is so shaken at its core that we might, the great grandkids might all be, Chinese slaves in some shape, way, or form. And
there we go with the fucking Chinese xenophobia. What the fuck, bro? Like, don't get me wrong, China is fucked up. They are authoritarian, but I'm pretty sure from the last time I looked, most Chinese people have a higher standard of living than people in the United States. And China isn't necessarily like, they aren't militarily aggressive imperialist most of the time. Obviously, they're extremely aggressive towards Taiwan, but their whole thing is kind of economic imperialism instead of old world, like conquer the world type shit. You know what I mean? But I mean, what can I say, bro? Whenever they can slide in just a little hint of racism, especially towards the superpower that they aren't on the side of, that's what they do. Doesn't the Youngkin laws stop kids from being posers and force them to legally change to be recognized? I'm not sure what that is. Let me look it up. Oh, okay, that's a dude. I thought you were saying like Youngkin as like some type of identity. Oh yeah, you're right. My bad. I'm also terrible with names, bro. Doesn't the Youngkin doesn't the Youngkin laws stop kids from being posers and force them to legally change to be recognized? Not necessarily, man. I think it's just something. I think the law is overly authoritarian and broad. Again, I don't care if these kids want to be posers and do this shit, man. As long as the people who actually feel that dysphoria and don't feel like they fit into those molds are able to express themselves in a way that's safe and in a way that they can do it with the community and have support from the community, I'm all for it, bro. That law is just bullshit that will hurt children in the long term, you know?
And that we're just waiting for the
Honestly,
arrival.
The only thing that prevents that is just the comparative advantage that the capitalistic system has over the communistic system. I mean, China has...
Like what, bro? Millions of people die every year because of starvation when it's 100% preventable, dude. Like, so much death and destruction. Every time someone talks about how capitalism is so much better than communism, I have to bring up South America, man. Because socialism was working and it was taking away money from the corporations in the United States, the CIA rained hellfire on Latin America. Every single country down there, except for one, had the CIA involved in a right-wing coup that brought devastation and destruction, rape and murder across the southern hemisphere, bro. It was carnage, and that was all for money. And they were pissed off because they were nationalizing public services and nationalizing extraction industries and farming industries to help the people, man. And they couldn't have that because that affected their bottom line, bro. Don't give me that fucking capitalism bullshit, man. Come on.
We're not even deriving, but on the trajectory that you described, I'm not even sure we're fully positioned to have those benefits anymore.
I mean,
really,
that's quite possible. I mean, I do think that the internal, to sound like a Marxist, I think the internal contradictions of the Chinese system are going to prove unworkable over the course of time, but not before they do an.
Wait, what the fuck are these guys saying? They're the type of people who like to use a lot of word salad to appear smart, so it's just fucking hard to follow sometimes, you know?
have those benefits anymore.
I mean, that's
Mhm,
the advantage that the capitalistic system has over the communistic system. I mean, China
But
has
we're
a
not
lot
even-
of.
As a side note, China is not communist at all, dude. Like, you can say that you're communist and socialist all day long. It's all about the material actions that you put forth. The Nazi Party called themselves like the National Socialist Party, while they burned books about socialism and communism. You know, the Chinese system is more state capitalist, you know, with like socialist characteristics. I know people love to say it, but there really hasn't ever been a communist system. Communism is when the workers control the means of production. Where has that ever been done, you know? And I'm not one of those people who think communism can like happen immediately. I fall more in like the Marxist, Leninist, Maoist kind of circle where, and more specifically with Lenin, where you need to have a socialist state in the beginning, but at the very beginning, you need to start changing society and breaking down those boundaries so that the state can wither away. It's all in the books, man. I highly suggest you guys read Lenin and Mao. I mean, Mao obviously did some fucked up shit, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a good strategist and he had some valuable insights for the left, you know? And Lenin, based, man. What can I say? You know?
We're not even deriving, but on the trajectory that you described, I'm not even sure we're fully positioned to have those benefits anymore.
I mean,
really,
that's quite possible. I mean, I do think that the internal, to sound like a Marxist, I think the internal contradictions of the Chinese system are going to prove unworkable over the course of time, but not before they do an extraordinary amount of actual material military damage.
Yep.
I think that the possibility of
that's so much projection, bro. Like the U.S. empire is kind of in its death rows right now. You know what I mean? Like, we're doing all this political maneuvering in the Ukraine, trying, without question, don't get it twisted, trying to keep them in a forever war to beat down the Russian economy and the Russian people, and as well as try and reposition themselves as the big baddie. I mean, don't get me wrong, they still are, but it's starting to crumble, and they're trying to do everything they can to stay on top, and that includes just the vicious, constant propaganda with China. You know what I mean? And like I always say, all these superpowers are fucked up, and they're playing games with people's lives to get that step up and be the top dog when they could be focusing on a lot more productive things. You know, but that's how the world is.
China starting to invade sovereign surrounding entities, including Taiwan, is now at an all-time high.
Right.
And I think that it's increasing pretty dramatically day by day because, again, they're looking at the fact that
And when it comes to Taiwan, so here's my take on that. If China had taken them over like 50, 60 years ago when the dictator first left the country, then I would say go for it, man. Like the way that Vietnam, or not Vietnam, what the fuck am I talking about? Damn, I'm all fucked up. The way that Taiwan came into existence is after the civil war between the communists and the old empire. The dictator of the empire corralled all of his political and military elite to Taiwan and installed like a brutal dictatorship over there, you know? So it was fucked up and authoritarian and all that bullshit. And China would have taken it over and liberated Taiwan a long time ago if it wasn't for U.S. meddling. They basically wanted Taiwan as like a stronghold within Asia, and they were like, if you go for them and try to fuck them up, we're gonna fucking rain hellfire on you. And the Chinese Communist Party couldn't deal with that because they just got through a civil war. There was widespread freaking destruction and death and devastation, and they had to deal with that and rebuild up, you know, the Chinese mainland and all that. But fast forward, like, you know, to today, Taiwan is obviously its own thing now. There's really no point in trying unification. They have their own systems. They have their own system. They have relative democracy. You know what I mean? At this point, they're just. I think it just goes back to like deep cultural anger over not being able to reunify all of China. You know what I mean? So it's very much based in that just the ghosts of the past. You know, they need to let that shit be and just handle their shit internally. Yeah, China can't even now take that island. No, I mean, definitely not. It would just further deeply destabilize the world. They would lose some of their economic power. You know, they would definitely lose out on trading and shit like that. China is a lot more of a competent imperialist power than the US, you know, so I don't think they're going to take as much risks in that regard, you know, but don't get it wrong, they definitely want it, and the war in Russia and Ukraine kind of emboldened them in a way to be a little bit more aggressive with it, but I don't see them retaking Taiwan anytime soon, if ever. But hey, no one expected Russia to do all this crazy shit either, you know, so who knows?
They're reproducing at far less than replacement rate. They're looking at the fact that they have extraordinary structural debt. They're looking at the fact that their economic growth has been on paper for...
We keep getting fucking caught up in these conversations, bro. I'm sorry I keep rewinding, but hey, this is what it's all about. I love the conversation. It keeps the flow going. It keeps me nice and relaxed, man. You know, I appreciate it.
Sovereign surrounding entities, including Taiwan, is now at an all-time high.
I definitely don't think China would invade anywhere else unless they got attacked, man. So that's just straight up lies.
Right. I think that it's increasing pretty dramatically day by day because, again, they're looking at the fact that they are reproducing at far less than replacement rate. They're looking at the fact that they have extraordinary structural debt. They're looking at the fact that their economic growth has been on paper for quite a while now.
They always like harp on the debt, but the U.S. is in extreme debt, you know, and debt isn't always bad. You know what I mean? It's a way to keep infrastructure growing and to try and do different things to grow the economy. With if you don't have the resources to do it, it's a gamble like everything else in a money-based society is, you know. The US has no place to talk about debt, especially when we have all this debt and have nothing to show for it. Like we've already talked about infrastructure is crumbling all around the US. We have the most amount of child poverty here. Where there's a huge wave of anti-intellectualism, again, because I think of McCarthyism back in the day that just is completely devastating the United States. We have no place to talk about the state of other countries. China's pop is starting to decline, and the reason they can't take Taiwan is lack of troop. I agree, it's now or never. Then it's probably going to be never, bro. And I've said it before, I don't think a draft in any developed nation would fly anymore, man. The internet has created people who are a lot more skeptical of power, even in places that are heavily censored like China and stuff. It still gets through those systems, you know, like, and we're a lot more of an international community now. Most common people realize that war brings nothing but just death and destruction. And it's almost never positive, and the goal is almost never for anything other than power politics, you know?
And they're realizing that maybe the way to grasp comparative power is to not generate more wealth for themselves, but to decrease the amount of wealth for everybody else.
Exactly.
Bullshit.
And I think there's a version of this dynamic. It reminds.
They say all this shit, but they never give like statistics or data or any kind of events to back it up. Like, how, man? Like, China is one of the biggest exporters in the world, bro. When other economies boom and trade with China grows and prospers, you know? They're just mad that they're taking a piece of the pie that they think should belong to the United States and the West, you know?
The famous Keynes quote or whatever, the market can stay rational longer than you can stay liquid. Sort of betting against a phenomenon. That's like the dynamic between China and the United States, militarily speaking, which is that, okay, yes, that gravy train ain't going to be running forever on the Chinese side of this. History teaches us that centrally planned economies and dictatorial systems usually fail under, among other things, even the hubris of their own leaders.
That's not true at all, man. You have to think, I mean, like, yes, there has been, you know, attempts at socialism and communism that have failed because of terrible leadership and a lack of planning or a lack of adequate planning. But a lot of the reason why all of these socialist and communist experiments failed was because of the immense pressure from the U.S. and Eastern Europe, more specifically, to curtail communism and socialism around the world. Like I said, they had all those CIA operations in South America. They had whole wars to prevent communism, like in Vietnam and Korea. They put sanctions on most of these places, and it crippled them and it made it harder to participate on the global stage because the global stage is set up to benefit capitalist countries and imperialist countries instead of those nations trying to buck the trend, you know? So of course it's going to be a struggle. And of course, a lot of those systems failed because of the insurmountable obstacles that they had to face. But we got to keep trying, man. We got to keep trying. Capitalism continues to and will continue to spell disaster as long as it keeps on chugging along, you know?
I think it's the best chance with Xi Jinping. And they do have their vulnerabilities.
But not before he completely wrecks our economy. I mean, like, if he invades
maybe even wrecks us
Taiwan.
militarily. I mean, let's just talk about Taiwan for a second. Where, I've sort of started to, you know, I'm not a military expert. I'm not going to claim to be one.
Yeah.
But as someone who's looked at this more than the average layperson, I will say that, you know, I've talked to Mike Pence about this. I've talked to, you know, Pompeo, others. You know, I'm sure you've had conversations with many of the same folks. They will tell you, as I believe, that okay, military conflict, we still come out ahead. I think that's what they're supposed to say. But
Over Taiwan, if they're saying that we come out ahead short of a full-scale shooting war between the United States and China over Taiwan,
I think it's kind of pointless to like capitulate over that. I really don't think any countries that have nuclear arms will risk going to war unless it's something very, very extreme. You know what I mean? And in terms of whether they would actually win or not, I kind of think it's up in the air. You know what I mean? China does have a massive military, and they can just throw troops at the United States. You know, just bodies just pile up the bodies in an effort to win. But United States, without a doubt, has a vast network all across the globe and intelligence apparatuses and superior military equipment that could definitely devastate, man. Like, I don't see really anyone coming out on top of, like, a war like that, because that would just be World War III. And you know the saying about that, man. We're going to go back to fucking fighting with sticks and stones if that happens.
I don't think we can stop them from taking Taiwan.
I don't think we can stop
they're
them
5
from taking
seconds
Taiwan.
from Taiwan, and we don't have the naval assets available
We don't have the naval
to
assets.
stop them. It's not. If they choose to take Taiwan, it's just a question of how many casualties they take to take Taiwan.
Yeah, I mean, if they really wanted to take Taiwan, I don't think there's a lot anybody really could do to stop them. You know what I mean? They would risk too much trying to engage militarily. Nah, dude, it's impossible. Man, I really just don't know. I could see them honestly getting it with the right, like, they are clueless. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look more into, like, the military strategy and shit, you know? I'm more of, like, a politics and economics kind of guy and not, like, a, you know, foreign policy dude. But, I mean, shit. Like I say, in my opinion, it could go either way. Like I think about it kind of like in the situation with, Russia and Ukraine. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, Russia's struggling hardcore right now, but China's a little bit stronger than them. You know, like, I would see it, like, probably dragging on a long time and there being a lot of casualties on both sides, but who knows? And on top of that, when they're, like, we saw it with the U.S. and Vietnam, man, when you have oppressors that are committing war crimes and doing terrible things to your people, all it does is bolster the resolve of the people fighting, and they know the areas better, you know, like, guerrilla warfare can seriously fuck up even the most powerful nations, you know? So we can speculate all we want, but we really wouldn't know definitively until something like it actually happened, you know? But I always respect everybody's opinion, bro, you know? Unless it's some hateful bullshit.
I actually agree with you, and I think that, you know, we did this exercise of sending the you know, ships through the Taiwanese Strait and sending a signal. The irony, and I think China knows this. I mean, from public information, any reasonable person can piece this together. Our Navy is actually going through an interesting period right now. It's what they call the divest to invest program.
Right.
So they're playing for 30 years from now, but they're actually
decommissioning ships.
Decommissioning
yeah, that's right.
ships at an extraordinary rate. And so if you're China, you're watching that. the ultimate irony, I don't know if it's literally true for the 2 ships that went through the Taiwanese Strait, but it might have been. As best I know, if I had to guess, it probably was true. That the moment that China chooses to invade Taiwan, if it's like 6 years from now or 5 years from now, those won't even be the ships. Those ships will have been decommissioned.
Right.
So the irony of like the very exercise we went through to puff our chests, like those very carriers will have been retired according to our divest to invest plan for the U.S. Navy.
I mean, a lot of, like I've said, like I talked about when we were talking about the article of Julian Assange, a lot of this stuff is not as planned out and calculated as you think it is. Like I was in military intelligence for a short period, and it really is just these like pompous, overpaid assholes trying to play general and they have like war game brain, you know what I mean? And it really is just about trying to be the biggest and baddest, and obviously they're gonna puff their chest, man. They don't like it when they feel threatened, and imperialist powers are always paranoid as hell, bro. You know what I mean? They're always scared to lose that power.
Navy in the very time frame that China is actually going to be invading Taiwan. And so I keep going back and forth between a view that I think the window, in any case, I've always said they weren't going to do it before October of this year, because that's when Xi takes his unprecedented third term.
Right.
That's when, it's a big move in China, by the way. He doesn't want to rock the boat to break the chain of succession, which is 2 5-year terms. He's going to take an unprecedented third term. That's a big deal. It's happening like in a month and a half, right? I mean, that's in October. So he was never going to go before then.
He's got to put some W on the board.
Which he's got to put some W on the board, but stability. But stability is the key. I mean, because there's some opposition even with.
Well, all right, man. I think we're done with this video. I think we extracted as much as we could out of it, man. At the end of the day, I do think that China does shit that's not okay, just like with every imperialist power. But a lot of this video was just projection, man. You know what I mean? America does the same shit, if not worse, all the time, man. And I'm not saying that, to be like, oh, what about this, what about that? They're all fucked up, man. But we have to cut through the propaganda to actually understand what's going on in the world,